Okay, it's almost been 10 minutes. So I'm going to start with at least the introductions and getting all of that started. And then anyone who wants to join beyond that, they can join. And also for those who are like already with us, thank you so much for attending. And if you know anybody who would be interested in attending this event, that's curious about Oxford and Cambridge, please feel free to share the link with them. The more the merrier, so please feel free. Okay, so as you know, this is the Access to Excellence series, and this is part 2, where we specifically look at postgraduate study at University of Oxford and University of Cambridge. So I just wanted to start off with the running order. So this is how we envisage the evening to go. So for those of you who are in Jamaica, we plan for this event to be happening between 5, so like now, until about 6:30 latest. And for those in the UK, like myself, 9 o'clock until about 10:30, again 10:30 latest. And we've done that because we want to leave you with plenty of opportunities to be able to ask questions and get to know other people who are involved in the event. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into things. So we would love it if we could have cameras on and mics off. I also just want to say that this meeting is also being recorded, just because we know that there's a few people who have not been able to attend, and we just want to make it accessible to people beyond just this evening. And also, if it's something where you are able to, we would also love it if you can participate. We want it to be really interactive. We want you to get to know us and for us to be able to get to know you guys. So ask your questions, share your opinions, your experiences, and we can go from there. And then also in terms of behavior, we want this to be a safe space where everyone feels comfortable to kind of talk and feels open to sharing their experiences and asking the questions they need to. So if you can just refrain from any inappropriate, discriminatory language and behavior, we would really appreciate that. And also just going over some of like what we actually want to get out of this. So we just want everybody who's attending this event to get a really clear understanding of not only what it takes to kind of apply to Oxford and Cambridge on more of a formal level, but also the realities of studying at Oxford and Cambridge. So really getting rid of some of those myths that people have, some of the concerns they have about fitting in. And then also providing you with information about all the support that's available, because that's something that can be really overwhelming, like trying to find funds and trying to find mentors. And that's where we want this event to be able to kind of combat some of that. And then also for you to be able to network internationally. Like we are really proud to have a lot of people from Jamaica having registered for this event, as well as a sizable amount of people from the UK. So we just want to really encourage this to be a space where actually we can both talk to each other, learn about each other's experiences, maybe connect on LinkedIn, become a bit more of a community. So moving swiftly on to introductions. So that's myself. So this is the Reconnect JA team, and we have myself, Rakani Phillipson. So I'm the founder, CEO, and managing director of Reconnect JA. Also refer to myself as the initiative lead, because that is all a mouthful. And in terms of what I do for the organization, so it was kind of something that was my idea, to create an organization that tries to empower and support Jamaican youth in Jamaica and in the UK. And found this amazing team as well. And I'm someone which really tries to drive the vision. And then we also have Sade, who is behind the scenes. So Sade, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, as Rakani has said, my name is Sade Christian. I am the treasurer of Reconnect JA. I'm also a current student at the University of Cambridge. I'm at Emmanuel College in my 3rd year and I'm studying economics. So I will be mostly in the chat today. If you have any questions that can be answered simply in the chat, I will do that. I'll also pop some useful links to University of Oxford and Cambridge websites, as well as other external funding websites as we go through them. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the session. It has a lot of information that I think will be really useful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Sade. And then also we have Tasnim Ince and Jaheen Smith, who were unable to be involved in this evening's event in terms of attending. So Tasnim recently graduated from University of Cambridge, specifically St. John's, and did HSPS, which is, and I always get this wrong, history, social, political sciences. Yes. And she is our monitoring, evaluation, and research lead. So some of the research that we're doing, even the things that go on after this, that is something that she will basically be involved with in terms of making sure we have all the information to be assessed, to be able to assess how well we're getting on and how well we're supporting the community. And we have Jaheen Smith, who is currently at Emmanuel College, and he is the director of partnerships and sponsorship. So again, making sure that we can collaborate with other organizations to be able to basically make sure that Reconnect JA and our services are aligning with what's already going on in the community. And I've mentioned Reconnect JA a couple of times, but what actually is Reconnect JA, you might be thinking. So we are a UK and Jamaica registered non-profit, and we try to empower and support Jamaican youth, local and global. And what that means for us is supporting Jamaican youth who are actually in Jamaica, as well as Jamaican youth who are descendants of Jamaica in the UK. And we have our 4 pillars on the screen. So education, really trying to make sure that good quality education is accessible for all Jamaican youth. Information sharing, so trying to be a central point to basically understand and reconnect with Jamaica. So if you're in the UK and you want to get your Jamaican passport, or you want to learn patois, or you want to understand how to get an internship or anything, that's where we can come in to try and support you with that. Travel, so if it's something where you want to go to Jamaica beyond being a tourist and you want to actually reconnect, whether that's through like volunteer tourism, whether that's through kind of staying like a locally owned Airbnb or a locally owned hotel, or whether that's like ecotourism, that's something that we can try and support you with, and we do support people with. And then volunteering as well. So we're really passionate about creating a process, a streamlined process, where young people of Jamaican descent in the UK can go to Jamaica and volunteer and engage in internships in areas where they can kind of support the local community, but also feel like they're reconnecting and building their own relationship with Jamaica beyond being a tourist and beyond, you know, what their parents or grandparents have told them, or those experiences, family experiences. Oh. And then we have the representatives for this evening. So I'll just reintroduce myself in terms of a representative. So I'll be representing more of the UK student experience. So I went to University of Cambridge in academic year 2022-2023, and I did the sociology of marginality and exclusion at Trinity Hall College. And what that specifically looked like in terms of my research is I researched Caribbean diasporic youth in rural UK. So how do people gain their sense of identity and belonging when you're in environments where you're potentially the only person who looks like you and has the same ethnic and racial background to you? So that's a bit about me. And then also we have Alyssa Mohammed as well. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm a current student at University of Oxford at Lady Margaret Hall College. I'm Trinidadian, born and raised, and I'm here, did my master's in social policy 2023 to 2024, and now I'm doing my DPhil in geography and the environment. And my research is very Caribbean focused, Trinidadian focused. So my research looks at sexual and reproductive health and rights, specifically sex education in Trinidadian schools, and how this interacts with Caribbean religion to make sort of interesting meaning making. So that's sort of what I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And that's really interesting topic. And I would love to like hear more about it afterwards. And then also we have David Salmon, who is unable to join us until 10 p.m. UK time / 6 p.m. Jamaica time. So if there's anybody out there who is a Jamaican national who has very Jamaica specific questions that you're like, actually, you're not sure if Alyssa will be able to support with that, then please feel free to save those questions until the end when David can actually join us. And then also on top of that, there'll be kind of like a little Q&A section for him, and he'll also be involved in more of the scholarship side of things and talk about that experience. And a little bit about David. So David has both the experience of being at Oxford and at Cambridge as well. He's someone who is very involved in journalism in Jamaica. He's very involved in the UK as well, always promoting Jamaica. And I'm sure he will introduce himself and all of his amazing work and his research topic a bit more fully when he arrives and joins us later this evening. So, you've met us, you've met the representatives, and you've met the team. So we would love to, you know, learn a bit more about you and meet the audience and be able to talk to you and get an understanding of you. So if anybody is willing and if anyone is brave enough, if you could kind of introduce yourselves, we would love that. Yeah,
I can go. I'm Jamar. The area of study I'm interested in is criminology at Oxford. Why did I join this event? Because I'm interested in doing that master's. I'm also of Jamaican descent. I spent my formative years in rural Jamaica, but I'm British born. So yeah, that's why.
awesome. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. And criminology, with a background in sociology, there's definitely been times I'm doing certain projects that kind of teeter into criminology, and especially looking at the experiences of kind of basically Black youth in rural areas. It does end up teetering into criminology, so it's such a good area. And is there anyone else? So I see that we have Javon and Ailey Edwards. So would anybody else like to introduce themselves?
Good evening.
Evening.
I joined this program specifically because I wanted to look into medicine specifically. And the reason I found out about this program is because when I was going to the UHS, they tend to post these types of opportunities there. So I figured it was just a good attempt.
No, thank you so much for that. And I appreciate that. And we can definitely, this is why it's so important to introduce, because before we even did this and we were kind of talking amongst ourselves, myself and the team members and Alyssa, we mentioned that there's a couple of differences between applying for other courses and then specifically applying for medicine. So now we know that that's what you're interested in. We can try and remember those nuances and make sure we include those as and when they're appropriate and applicable. So thank you so much for that, Javon. I appreciate it. Okay, and would anybody else like to introduce themselves? Okay, Well, what I am happy to do is I'm happy to just move on to the next slide and get a bit more into the actual information. So the essentials. So this is the time to get your notes up because we'll be talking about some deadlines. We'll be talking about what's needed. We'll be giving some tips and some information. So starting off, we need to think about what are the things to actually consider. And although it may seem obvious, we just also want to clarify these things and put it in a place where it's really easy to see it. So when it comes to your grades, so if you're coming from the UK, realistically, you do want to have a first class, because when you're looking at applying to Oxford and Cambridge, everyone has good grades. So they're looking for not just good grades, but they're looking at the best grades. You can still get into some courses with like a strong 2-1, but you may also need to have some things to supplement that. So being able to say, okay, you have like, you know, a few years of professional experience, or maybe you were heavily involved in student activities and maybe leadership roles within the university on a student level. And then also not only think about like your overall grade, but for a lot of courses at a postgraduate level, they require you to submit sample work or a sample publication or sample research. So it's also something where not just thinking about your grades, but you also want to think about, you know, your writing style. Do you feel like you have, you know, really good sample work from your undergraduate degree? Or when you're applying, is it something where you would want to write two pieces of work completely different to kind of sample what you can do? You also want to think about you beyond academics. So obviously, you know, you're going to university for the sake of academics, but when you're looking at Oxford and Cambridge, there's so much more than that. There's so many more opportunities beyond that. So what you want to look at first and foremost is what is your teaching and learning style? Because Oxford and Cambridge they know that you have the academic ability. The support isn't as supportive as it might be in other universities. So what I mean by that is that, you know, you might talk that there's not office hours a lot of the time. In a lot of departments, it's something where you have to make very clear appointments. So that's something where if you're used to just being able to pop in, that's not going to be a thing. Also, at postgraduate level, it's something where it's very self-led. So, you know, you might have, let's say, a handful of lectures in the year, but the rest of the year is actually for you to do your own work, and maybe take some optional modules here and there. And then also networking opportunities and career goals. So if you're somebody who, yes, you're doing this degree, but actually you have a business idea, or you've always wanted to try out, I don't know, you've wanted to network in a way where you want to engage in international networking, then you really need to also think about what your goals are, because that will then change, let's say, the colleges that you look at, and then that will also kind of affect your application. And then just touching on the college system. So as you may or may not be aware of, Oxford and Cambridge have a college system. Cambridge has 32 colleges, and I believe Oxford has 36. So a lot of colleges to choose from, each with a very unique history and identity. And then the opportunities, both career-wise, networking-wise, extracurricular-wise, and even academically, they differ very much college to college. So when you're thinking about the networking opportunities or the extracurriculars you want to engage with, you also have to look at that not only just in a university-wide way, but in a college way as well. So you have to be very, very sure of like what you want to do and what your goals are. And I would strongly recommend almost writing them down and then going from there. And then also finances, which for a lot of people is the main barrier, especially at postgraduate level when it feels like there's a bit less support available. So just being aware of tuition fees, the college fees, which college fees mostly accommodation, and then the living costs, especially at postgraduate level. Something that some people forget is research costs. So even at an MPhil level, which is the master's level rather than a PhD level, you have to be aware that actually if you want to do field work, you might have to think about traveling, printing your posters, the what do you call it? Basically the vouchers when people participate. You have to think about all of those things and how you're going to finance them, because it can come up to a lot of money. And then leading back to the college system, not every college and not every department can support you with research costs. So you really have to think on a whole level, how can I fund this? And then again, just to really hone in on the college system. So the college system, for some people, is something that can make or break their experience, because the college system is really where you call home, but it's also where you'll end up studying. So for context, your college is where it will be where your accommodation is. It will also be the place that basically looks after you. So your department supports you with the academic stuff only, but your college also supports you with some of the academic, but also the pastoral support, also with the living arrangements. Every college also has a library, and that will be your 24-hour library as well. So when you're thinking about whether you want to do an open application, which is to any college, or if you want to do a closed application to specific colleges, then just be aware that the college that you choose can affect, you know, what materials you have access to and things like that. And then moving on to application timelines. So for Oxford and Cambridge are similar, but ever so slightly different when it comes to application timelines. So this one is Oxford specific. So early September is when the application portals actually open. However, what you'll want to do is before the portals even start, you want to have all your ducks in a row in terms of sorting out all of your evidence and all the things that you need to submit to have a full application. And we'll go over what that actually looks like in a few slides. November, if you're an international student, November is when it is recommended to submit your application if you will need support with your visa. And similarly, if you have a disability, whether that is a physical disability, whether that is mental health, whether that is neurodiversity, that is where you want to also try and submit your application as soon as possible, simply because they need a bit more time to be able to support you but to be able to look at your application and also get the ball rolling on those extra support things that you'll need. And yes, Alyssa, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on the visa stuff. So generally, my understanding, if you need a student visa, you need to get your CAS or your confirmation acceptance number first before you can apply for a student visa. I've done it twice, and that's always been the situation. So while it would be nice for us to put in the visa application from November, actually it's probably more realistic for it to happen after you get your offer, after you get your confirmed offer. So I mean, you would understand, you would apply, and then they would say, especially if you're still undertaking your previous program, they would say, well, get a first in your undergrad degree, for instance, and then we will give you a place on this master's course. And once you achieve, you know, whatever grades or evidence they need, you get something called a confirmation acceptance number, and you need that number to put in your student application. But you shouldn't stress too much about the tight visa timelines, especially for Oxbridge. They get pushed through very quickly, so it's not something to worry about too much.
No, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that, because again, one of the reasons why we're doing this event is because the information online is not always clear. And that was something that on the website wasn't clear. So please make a note of that if you're an international student interested, because I'm sure that's something that is beyond Oxford and Cambridge and is probably a UK-wide, you know, pattern. So then moving on to kind of December and January. So December and January is the general application deadlines for Oxford, and it is also the internal scholarship deadlines. So what will happen is when you submit your application, or when you're doing your application, there will be a box that says, I want to be considered for funding. And that gives the university permission to look at everything, whether it's nationality, racial background, maybe your family's income, whatever it may be, and then align you with different scholarships that are available. So it takes a little bit of the burden off of you in terms of trying to find scholarships and funding. So it's just really important to tick that box. And it is the same for Oxford and Cambridge. It is the same for also if you're international or you're national, or you're local, so UK resident applying as well. So bear that in mind. And also they do also come on like a first come first serve basis. So it is also really important, if you know that funding is something that's going to be key for you to be able to actually attend, to make sure to really be trying to actually, you know, submit your application closer to December. And then if there's interviews, then you will be told around January and February. Usually this is about 8 weeks after you submitted your application, and offers are made around February to March. And one of the differences between Oxford and Cambridge is that so some courses, it will actually be the case where, you know, they have certain spots that are still available. Maybe they didn't fill all the spots on the first round, so they then create a second round. So some spaces will reopen, and you'll see that on the website. It will reopen, let's say around March. So, but just be aware that if you're a person that is applying around that March time, you won't be considered for internal funding at all, because all of the deadlines will have already passed. And also on top of that, another thing that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alyssa, that you mentioned previously, was that for medicine, the deadlines for medicine are also a bit more in November. So the general deadlines are in November. So that's also another thing, is that although we're giving you these general deadlines and you can take a picture and make your notes, it is really key to make sure that you are actually looking at your specific courses and those specific course websites and pages, online, to see what the timeline is, because every course is very different. And then also by the end of August for Oxford, that's when you're expected to fulfill all of your course conditions. So what we mean by that is that when you get your offer letter from your department, there will be a list of conditions. So some of those conditions are that you need to get a certain grade. Some of those conditions may be a visa condition. Other of those conditions are going to be financial conditions. And that's a key one that I just want us to focus on for a minute, because what that means is that they need all of the evidence that you can they'll give you a figure. And let's say, if I remember off the top of my head, my figure was around £30,000. So they will say, okay, we need to know that you can basically fund that amount of money, and we need to know the exact sources. So that will be, not only will it be a form, but it will also include, let's say you do get an external scholarship, it will be getting a letter from the external scholarship provider and saying, here, this scholarship said that they're going to give me X amount. It will also be maybe a statement from the bank, or a bank statement to say, I have X amount of savings that I can put into this account. It might be, if you do a GoFundMe or fundraising anyway, it will also be that as well. So just be aware of that the end of August is when you have to have all of your core funding, available, uploaded and submitted to the university to be able to turn that conditional offer into an unconditional offer. And then for Cambridge, it's a slightly different process. So again, the application portal opens in early September, and then when it comes to submissions, there's like 2 deadlines that you really need to think about. So there's the 3rd of December, which is the first funding deadline. And on your specific course website, it will make it very, very clear which deadline you need to be concerned about. But these are the 2 core ones. So the 3rd It's almost like round 1 of funding, and then the 7th is like round 2 of funding. And again, you want to really make sure you're trying to submit your application as soon as you feel like it is ready and a fair representation of your work, because these things are first come, first served. If you have interviews, that will be around December and January. Again, I believe around 8 weeks. I think they said 6 weeks, actually, 6 weeks after you submitted your application, and then offers are made around 12 weeks after you've submitted your application. So that's when you should hit it back. And the general application deadline is March. And then to meet your offer conditions, you have until the 31st of July, so slightly earlier than Oxford. So I've mentioned a few times about the conditions and touched on supporting documents, but I just wanted to make it really clear what these supporting documents actually are and what it takes, and why I recommend that you actually get the ball rolling before the portals even open, before September. I would go as far to say if you wait until September, you probably can't like apply that year, simply because when it comes to references, you need at least 2 references, and they need to be obviously great references from previous lecturers. When it comes to transcripts as well, so you'll need a formal transcript from your university, previous university, and that's something that can take time. So it's not something that where they'll accept, let's say, screenshots from like an online portal. It has to be something that has to be like kind of signed or stamped, a formal transcript, a CV or resume, a personal statement which will go alongside your application, saying why you want to go on the course, why do you want to go to either Oxford or Cambridge, and kind of showcasing yourself. And that's really where you showcase your personality and your passion. A research proposal. And so this is something which will change course per course, and it will make it very clear what the research proposal requirements are, but it will be an academic style research proposal. So my one, for example, was 1,000 words, and the research proposal was a research proposal on what I wanted to research in the department. And that's also used to be able to figure out, okay, who will your supervisor be? And is it something where they can actually accept you? Samples of written work, a graduate record examination, and they don't accept GMAT, if that means anything to any of you. It has to be the GRE, and they'll make it very clear on the website. And then the financial documents, which I've mentioned, which is something that you need post offer. So all of the aforementioned, the ones before the financial documents, are stuff that you need to actually submit your application. And if you're an international student, also the number that Alyssa was mentioning, was it the CSA number?
So the CAS number is something that you get when you get that unconditional offer. So along with your unconditional offer, they will send you a CAS number. So that's like, for a lot of people, when you achieve those conditions, that will be as you were saying, towards end of July, early August, or whenever it is you fulfill that conditions, then you will get the CAS. You don't have, so that's nothing to do with your application. That will be for your visa, which is, you know, the last thing that most people will do, international students, is apply for your visa.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. So yeah, so in terms of post offer, for international students, visa and financial documents, and for UK residents who will be applying, it is just the financial documents. So that's a lot of information, and I appreciate it's a lot of information. So I wanted to just break that down into almost like important tasks, tangible steps, and when to do them. So before September, before the portals even open, what you need to be doing is researching the courses and making your definitive, here are the courses that I want to apply for. For Oxford, I'm also aware that you can only apply to, I believe, 3 courses at a time. So that's also something to be aware of. And for Cambridge, I didn't see a cap at all. You also want to be researching your potential supervisors. So especially at PhD level, but also still at master's MPhil level, your supervisor can again be a make or break. Is this someone who actually understands your research area? What have they already researched in the research area? What is their communication style? Do they understand it? Do they understand your research, and do they understand you and where you're coming from in your style of learning? So you want to research them. And I would also say it never hurts to kind of send a little email to try and build up some rapport and kind of set yourself apart from the rest. You also want to be contacting the third parties to secure those supporting documents. So you mentioned transcripts. If you know that your university isn't very on it when it comes to emails, and it can get like very lost in the system, then email them as soon as you're even thinking about doing another degree, because whether it's Oxford, Cambridge, or University of Nottingham, University of Bradford, wherever it is, you're going to need an official transcript, and you're going to need it to even apply. Also, you're going to want to reach out to your favorite previous lecturers at undergraduate. So I hope you kept in contact with them, because again, you need to have some really glowing references, academic references, and a minimum of 2, and the more the merrier. So reaching out to them to give them a very clear deadline of, okay, this is how much time you have, here's what needs to be included in those references, and then writing up your personal statement and your research proposal drafts. And again, another reason why I say reach out to specifically your lecturers as soon as you're even thinking about postgraduate study is because when it even comes to, let's say, the research proposal, again, not to always put it to my personal experience, but in my experience, I really leaned on my previous lecturers to support me with my research proposal, because it was 1,000 words, but it had to include funding, why it's important, your methodology, something that could easily be 3,000 words. And it has to be an amazing standard. You only get one chance of it. So if you also feel like it's something where, and like Alyssa just mentioned, for Oxford, 3 references is usually the standard. So again, just make sure you're reaching out to all of the lecturers that you know. And just in case one says, oh, I'm on holiday or whatever, you know that you're not going to accidentally fall short. But yeah, also you want to reach out because you probably want their support with writing your research proposal as well. And then also between September and March, so that's the timeline that we've just mentioned. So applications open, they close, you submit all of the application supporting documents that we've mentioned. And then the final application opportunity is in March. But if you leave it past December, January, there's not really the opportunity to be considered for internal funding. So please bear that in mind. And then after the application submission, and these are mainly recommendations from experience, what you want to do is you want to be gathering and submitting all of your offer conditions evidence. So securing the minimum funds and then organizing visas, and then also thinking about kind of the other funding, external funding as well, just in case you aren't successful in any of the internal funding, and then saving as well on a personal level. And then also March to October is also when you really just want to hone in on like, okay, any last bit of funding, let me try and get access to it. And then things to showcase in your application. So academic ability obviously is a must, and you really want to showcase that. So the sample pieces of work are going to be really important. And also, especially at postgrad level, you want to also think about not just your academic ability in university spaces, but how have you used your academic ability outside of university spaces? Especially if you're someone who's had a couple of years out of education, is it something where actually you did an undergraduate in medicine and then you worked as like a technician in a hospital for a few years, and then you're coming back to further it or gain a bit more of a streamlined insight into something, a specialism into something. You also want to think about your non-academic achievements. And again, this is really important at postgraduate level, because the bar is a little bit higher, because they're thinking, okay, these are students who have already gone through the university system once. These are potentially mature students who have been out into the world. So Oxford and Cambridge isn't just about academic ability, it's about future leadership, people who are going to be paving the way in certain areas. So they want to see that you've already started doing those things. Future goals as well. So there will be a section in your application where it talks about, you know, share a little bit about you beyond academics, or what are your future goals. And that's where you want to showcase what you're already doing, and how what you're already doing is aligning to your future goals, and how does this degree that you are applying to fit into all of that. And then throughout, you want to showcase your passion and your dedication, and hopefully that will shine through the sample pieces of work, the interview, the research proposal, and the different supporting statements as well. Yeah, Alyssa?
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything you said. One thing that I just want to emphasize while we're talking about this is, I think a lot of this can be and should be demonstrated in the personal statement, or perhaps the research proposal, depending. But I think something that people can sometimes forget, I was guilty of it, is that your personal statement is not only an opportunity to showcase, you know, all your best qualities, but it's also a place where you can subtly make up for perhaps inconsistencies or inadequacies. So for instance, let's say you are moving from one discipline that you did in your undergrad to a slightly different discipline that on paper people are like, I'm not sure how this makes sense. This is a place for you. I mean, you don't have to say, while I am not qualified, you don't have to say that, but you can, you know, say, you know, while my undergrad background was slightly different, these are some ways that it's my undergrad background or other experiences, non-academic achievement, or future goals even, can thread into this program. You always want to show why this program is important, not only for your past, but as a stepping stone into the future as well. And so I think a lot of people can be like, the instinct is always to hide away the parts that you don't want them to see, but they will see it, right? They will see it when they read your CV. They will see it in what you don't say. So say it, make a statement, try something. You never know how the person reading it will react. That's my perspective.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think that is a great take, especially for those who are changing disciplines ever so slightly as well. And then this is just an opportunity for both Alyssa and I to be able to share experiences and answer any questions you may have specifically on the application process. So please feel free to raise your hand or pop in the chat any questions that you do have, and then we can answer them here, and questions specifically about the application process. Any questions? Yeah, Javon, please feel free.
So I previously went through a university's website and I saw that they have like projects that they're already working on and that they consider students for. Is it a case where projects like that, we don't have to worry about funding since it's already an established project? And if so, how does that change the nature of the application process?
So just to clarify, so what you mean is that you've gone on the website, you've seen a project that you're keen to be involved in, and it aligns well with your subject area or the degree that you are interested in doing. And what you're trying to ask is basically how you can be involved in that project and how you would weave that into your application. Is that a good understanding?
Good enough, I'd say.
I think maybe what you're referring to is something called a studentship, right? Is it a PhD project that you're looking at, Javon?
I saw a couple MPhil projects in a
Okay.
similar light, actually.
Okay, so if it is what I understand it is, which is the studentship, so sometimes professors, labs, they will have projects that they have going on, and instead of, and here you learn a little bit about the predatory nature of academia, instead of paying an employee to do it, they say, well, we will have a funded, DPhil position or MPhil position, but you don't get to choose what you study. You have to study what we are studying, and you get a degree out of it. Is it something like that, Javon?
Yes, I think that's exactly what it is.
So in that case, 99% of the time, they are either fully funded or nearly fully funded. But it always, get your money, like make sure all the T's and I's, in line before you say yes to anything. And a lot of the times, if they are excited about you, you could even negotiate the amount of money, but most of these positions are funded. So that will be something that you have to worry about less.
Thank you.
And then I think the only other thing I'd love to say to just chime in on that is there's also times where you'll see Oxford and Cambridge doing amazing research. However, there's not a studentship available. So, for example, in my experience, again, because I researched Black British identity is something that I'm very interested in, but obviously I was focusing on kind of the experience of Caribbean British people in rural areas. So I'm interested in all the intersections really. But what I noticed is the sociology department was doing the Black British Voices project. So it was one of the first large-scale projects looking at how Black British people identify their experiences of racism, their experience of education, all sorts. And that's something that I actually weaved into my application. Again, another way that I could stand out and show why I'm so passionate and dedicated. So if it is something where you are seeing, like whether it is a specific studentship or a specific project that the department or the university is doing, just make sure to include that in the application somewhere, because it's another thing that really sets you apart, and then they can see, oh, okay, Javon's actually really interested in this specific project, and then it makes it easier for them to then consider you for that studentship. And also, if there's not studentships available, then it's something where, again, you can always find someone's email and you can always start the networking early. So you can, like what I did, send that email beforehand to try and get the ball rolling, to be involved in that project and create an informal role, even if there isn't one. And were there any other questions about anything to do with applications so far? Okay, no problem then. So now moving on to how does Oxbridge differ to other UK universities? So I feel like a lot of the press that Oxford and Cambridge gets, it can make it a bit confusing, even more daunting to apply and feel like you can fit in. So you really just want to kind of demystify a lot of those bits and bobs right now. So some of the key differences is, first of all, when you're thinking about Oxford and Cambridge, the history is so much longer than other universities. So Oxford is, I think it was like 1066, or it's 11th century, and then Cambridge is 13th century. So these are some of the oldest universities in the English-speaking world. And the reputation that you get from that is a reflection of that long-standing history and the types of people who have historically gone to those universities, and also the sorts of people that Oxford and Cambridge reproduce. So there's so many rich traditions, old traditions, speaking Latin, having gowns, global influence, that is a very key difference when you compare Oxford and Cambridge to basically any other university in the UK. And as I've touched upon, Oxford and Cambridge are two of the few universities that have this college system, which basically means that instead of it being, oh, I have the university and I have the department, it's no, you have the college, the university, and the department. And actually the college, you'll feel more a part of the college than the actual university. It's a very interesting thing. But again, all of these things then link into the overall culture. And I just want to kind of explain that a little bit more. So when we talk about history again, like I said, because of the rich history, the traditions that you are expected to be involved with and you will be involved with, they're just different. So for example, it's quite regular to have, let's say you have traditions like matriculation, where you'll wear gowns and there'll be a formal process to becoming a member of the college. If like myself, you didn't go to, you know, a private school or something like that, this will also potentially be some of the first times where you're in an environment with, you know, 3-piece set of cutlery with different glasses, and it's candlelit, and you're in an extravagant hall and someone is speaking in Latin and all of those sorts of things. Very, very formal. Also, you have things like Mabel and commemorative balls, which are different celebrations, which are black tie. And again, this feeds into the history, because when you come into these establishments, it's not just about the academics and the networking, but it's also about teaching you how to kind of fit into a different level of networking. So being used to black tie and knowing what that looks like as well will be something that you'll kind of get accustomed to. And things like boat races as well, which is, you know, the little rivalry between Oxford and Cambridge. And then, like I said, it all feeds into the culture. So there's also formal halls, which, like I said, 3-course formal dinner. Also different traditions like graduation being all in Latin and very different. It will just feel very different to your undergraduate university experience. And the reputation as well. So it is very academically rigorous. That's something that it's known for, but what that looks like in practice in terms of your actual student experience is you'll have very short terms, and it will be very intense short term. So it's 8 weeks instead of kind of the usual kind of 2 terms, which, you know, one term is, let's say, 3 months and the other term is 3 months. It's 8 weeks, you have 3 of them, and, you know, that last term, which is Lent term. I'm really bad with the terms. Are you okay? Do you know the terms, Alyssa?
I don't know if it's the same for
no, go on.
Yeah, for Oxford it's Michaelmas, Hilary, and Trinity. I'm not sure if it's different at Cambridge.
See, you learn something new every day, because that's definitely not ours. For us, it's Michaelmas, Lent, and Easter. Yeah, Michaelmas, Lent, and so
it's very Christian.
These things, and these are the things that, you know, we'll talk about it now, but you'll hear them so often, and you have to get involved in that system because that's how everyone refers to things, and they differ even university to university. So another thing. But yeah, and then also just touching on the reputation thing as well. So what you'll also notice is that because of the reputation, it is also very easy to kind of network with high net worth people. And what I mean by that is that you can find yourself in spaces where you can curate internship opportunities, or you'll find opportunities that you just simply wouldn't have anywhere else, or it'd be a lot more difficult to get access to those opportunities. The college system is something that we've touched on, but I just really want to hone in like how important it is to kind of just look into the colleges, because another thing is that also every college is different, and just to exemplify what that can look like. So here I've just got a few different colleges throughout Oxford and Cambridge. So Murray Edwards and Newnham are 2 female only colleges. and they've historically always been female only. For Oxford, there's no longer any female only colleges, they're all co-ed, but there are a couple of universities that were historically female only colleges, which I'm sure is still reflective in the current culture at those colleges. There's also St. John's College at Oxford and Trinity College at Cambridge, which are the richest colleges. And what that looks like is, let's say, when it comes to additional financial support, whether you want support with research or you want to go to a conference abroad, or whether it's pastoral support, maybe financial support for therapy or disability or anything like that, those colleges will most likely have the money to be able to support you with those things. And then there's also colleges that may have historically had a focus area. So for example, Churchill College in Cambridge, historically, the way that it was founded, to my understanding, is that Churchill went to MIT in the States, loved it, and was like, okay, I want something like that in England. But instead of making a whole university, he actually just sponsored there being a college within, you know, Cambridge. And that's what it was kind of curated and developed after and inspired by. And then St. Peter's College, to my understanding from what I could find, is something that is a college that is a bit more financially accessible. And that's the roots of why that college was founded, to make it more accessible as well. And then, as Sade so rightly mentioned in the chat as well, is that there's a couple of colleges that are postgrad colleges only. So Wolfson, for example, and again, Sade, correct me if I'm wrong, but Wolfson College at Cambridge is a postgraduate only college. That is also one of David's previous colleges. And I'm sure if anyone had any questions on that, he would speak about that. And here he is. Okay. I can see a raised, I could see a raised hand. Yes, Alyssa, please feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. There are a few Oxford colleges that do have like a strong Caribbean legacy. So that's something that you can do some research on in your own time. I know a lot of people talk about a Caribbean legacy at Lincoln College, for instance, and things like this. And I'm sure, you know, David can probably add his 2 cents on that.
No, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, David, for joining us. I really appreciate it. So what we're just talking about now is we are basically just talking a little bit about Cambridge and Oxford culture, and we're on the slide just talking about the college system and specifically the intricacies of each college having a separate identity and history, and what that can look like in terms of student experience, opportunities, the communities that are attracted to those different colleges. So that's just where we are at the moment. So I'm not sure if there was anything that you wanted to share yet. And if you do want to share anything, please just like raise your hand and then we can go from there.
Sure. All right, no problem. Just one quick point in terms of the college life. I'm sure it has already been mentioned, but each college is very unique. And it has its own personality to it. So, for example, no two colleges are alike. So even in Cambridge, I went to Wolfson. It was in a newer college, very different energy that you can get from another college that would also be new. Similarly, at Oxford here, I'm also a part of an older college, Exeter, which is very different from some of the other older colleges that are there. So when looking at which college you are interested in, it's also helpful to know or read up about what people say about the college, reviews on it, looking at, let's say, it's graduate life, particularly its common room or community, you know, whichever way they call it, because that also plays an important role.
No, thank you so much for that. So hopefully you've got the message that colleges are important, you guys. They are very important. They're key. And then I also just wanted to touch on some of the key differences between Oxford and Cambridge. And these are some of the differences that I've noticed through my undergraduate, where I went to Oxford Brookes University. So I can't chime in on the academic experience. Maybe that's something that David can mention if he feels like there's anything to mention that I've missed. But then also doing my master's at Cambridge. So in terms of like the city themselves, so Cambridge is a way smaller city. It's way less diverse and it can feel like a town. So if it's something where that's something that's attractive to you, then that's something to bear in mind. But if you are looking for a larger city that feels more diverse, especially the diversity beyond the university, then Oxford might be a bit more appealing. In terms of transport links, you know, Oxford has better transport links, but that's also reflective of the fact that it is a bigger city. So, you know, when it comes to coaches, buses, trains, and also because of Oxford location as well, being quite close to, you know, Bristol, Birmingham, Reading, that are all quite big cities in their own right. Oxford can be very appealing place to be if you're someone who wants to travel beyond Oxford, or you're someone who feels like actually, you know, you don't just want to be in one place at one time. You want to be able to explore and engage in other activities and other opportunities that might be in those other areas. However, when it comes to Cambridge, it's kind of a little bit by itself in terms of its location in relation to other cities around it. I would say the next closest city is probably London, to be honest. However, it is also quite close to Stansted Airport. So if you're someone who likes to travel, then that can be appealing. And then proximity to London, both of them are pretty similar, you know, like under an hour on the train, an hour, just over an hour by coach. But the one thing that I will say for Oxford is that they have the Oxford Tube, which is a 24-hour coach. So whether it's Christmas Day, New Year's, you know, 1 a.m, you know that you can very easily get from central London to Oxford city centre in a timely manner, a safe manner, and it's actually very affordable. There's more of a social scene, and that social scene also has a social scene where you can actually like find Caribbean music as well in Oxford. So that's one thing that I would say, whereas the social scene in Cambridge is smaller. However, I have noted there's more societies. So if it's something where you want an experience where actually the university is your home, then I would say that's something where Cambridge might actually be a bit more appealing. If it's something where you also want to explore and feel like you're a part of a wider community and be involved in other things beyond the university, then Oxford definitely would have its appeals ahead. And then I think we've spoken about student life already, but did anybody have any questions about whether it's the city, whether it's the college system, whether it's some of the traditions? Were there any questions to any of those? Nope, that is absolutely okay. And I think for the sake of time, I'm going to just move on if there's no questions. So then moving on to scholarships and funding. So this is the part where definitely please pay attention. Please, again, get your notepads, your pens, and really just take pictures of the slides if you need to. And also, as you know, Sade's putting things in the chat, but we will also send a document at the end of the month, but basically all of the information that we've accumulated throughout the sessions. So for UK scholarships and UK funding, there's internal opportunities, and this will happen when you tick that box in your application to say that you want to be considered for funding. So obviously you have Student Finance England. However, what you will especially see with Oxford and Cambridge is that even if you max out Student Finance England, it will not cover all of the expenses. It won't cover all of the expenses that are kind of set out in your offer letter. So you need to be aware that even if you max out Student Finance England, you will still need to explore other opportunities funding wise or save up. And then obviously there's university managed scholarships, which which you get access to when you tick that box, so you don't need to apply. There's standard bursaries as well. So if you get under a certain amount, if your household, get under a certain amount, then actually you might get some support, let's say £500 a month or something like that. But that is something that differs person per person and can also be affected by your college as well, or the university. So just be aware of that as well. And then college specific scholarships and funds, which you will become aware of once you have been allocated to a college. So when I say college specific scholarships, let me just like hone on what I actually mean. So taking the example of Jesus College at University of Cambridge, I found on their website 10 different scholarships ranging between £4,500 to £20,000. And this would be on top of whatever funds that you had found, even if you had access to internal funding. So what would happen is you would apply, you would be told about your internal funding, and then once you get allocated a college, that is your green light to say, okay, let me see what funding is available at that college. And the college hopefully have a very up-to-date website to tell you what's available. And for a lot of the college specific scholarships, it is academic ability focused, but sometimes it is based on research area. So that's something to be aware of as well. And also something to be aware of when you're even doing your application and deciding between an open application and a closed application. And then again, focusing more on the UK side. So in terms of the more external funding, here are just some things that you can kind of look into. So there's postgraduate search, which is basically a search engine where you can find all sorts of different postgraduate funding opportunities that you will apply for independently from your actual, like the actual application. So that's something to kind of be thinking about after you've already done the hard work of applying and submitting everything. There's also the Black Heart Fund. So the Black Heart Foundation, is an external fund, and it is something where you apply and the application is based on the deficit and it's based on the need. So this is one of the rare opportunities where it's not about academic ability. They don't ask for a transcript. They don't care about the ability. It's also open to all universities. So even if you find yourself in the future not wanting to go to Oxford or Cambridge, but you want to go somewhere else, this is still a great opportunity and a great one to look at. And again, any deficit, it's mainly about hardship. It is also open to international students, and I'm going to touch on that in the slides coming forward. And then the Turn to Us grant search engine. So for this one, what you want to do is you can literally just search Turn to Us grant search, and then it will give you a search engine. It will ask for your postcode. It will ask for some other details, age, do you have any disabilities? What is your area of professional area of interest? And then it will tell you all of the scholarships and grants and what they will cover based on postcode, based on age, based on everything that you've inputted. So even things that you think no one's going to give a grant for that, but one that I had access to was, because I'm a vegetarian, there was a vegetarian and a vegan society one that gave like £500. And I would never have found that if it wasn't for this grant search engine. And again, they're non-academic. It doesn't matter about your academic ability. And I don't know if anyone in the UK had any questions about any of the funding bits and bobs that I've just mentioned so far. Any questions? There's no problem. I think the only other thing that I want to mention in terms of the funding side is I had a situation where basically I was accepted into Jesus College and I was super excited. I did a tour. I loved it. I was like, oh my goodness, there's diversity. It's close to town. I loved it. And I applied for a fund. It was the Albert Go. It was quite a long title, but the Albert Go Fund, and it was for like £15,000. And I was successful in that. However, then I was told that I was successful in the Getting Cambridge Scholarship, which was something that was internally managed, and that was specifically tied to Trinity Hall. So that's also something that can arise where you can be allocated to a college with an open application, because I had an open application. So you get allocated to a college, however, funding comes through for another college, and then you're left with the decision of, okay, where do you want to follow? Do you want to follow the money? Do you want to follow the college that you feel like best suits your identity and your needs? And that's something that can come up. So that's another reason why it's really important to look at external options as well, just in case you do get, you know, the opportunity to get a large amount of money, let's say that's associated to a college where you feel like you absolutely wouldn't fit in. Maybe it's really far away from your faculty, but you know, you can have the safety blanket of actually funding that you've sourced to be able to make sure you can still have a great student experience and all your needs are met. So that's just a thing that I wanted to kind of highlight there. And then now moving on to the international side, so the Jamaican side. So when it comes to scholarships and funding internal opportunities, again, it's all the same. So there's university managed scholarships, which when you tick that box, you'll get allocated to different ones based on, you know, what you've said and the eligibility criteria, and that's completely out of your hands. And there's also college scholarships and funds, which you will learn a bit more about and will become more important once you are allocated to an actual college. And then some external opportunities. So obviously the British Council and the Commonwealth Scholarships both have search engines, and I highly recommend you look at both of those. It's just aimed at finding different scholarships, and you can really hone it in based on nationality, based on whether it's, you know, master's or PhD, and then you can kind of apply there and find those. Some of them are also internally managed, so just be aware that you're not duplicating, but there are still some which are external. And then also the Black Heart Foundation is also open to any national, and that's something that I got confirmation of via email as well, even though it's not explicit on their website. So it is very competitive because, you know, it's something that is open to any amount, whether it's £500 deficit or whether you want the whole of your course fees covered. And also I got confirmation that it's something that you can do before you have an unconditional offer. So if it's something where you're worrying, oh my goodness, how am I going to meet the financial requirements in time? How am I going to raise that much if I don't get a scholarship? This is something where you can actually apply to the Black Heart Foundation. If you are successful before the deadlines, then you can get a letter from them to say that they're going to cover a certain amount, and then include that to, again, take a little bit of the financial burden away. And then again, the Turn to Us grants. I would say when you're, as an international student or potential international student, when it comes to the Turn to Us grant, you want to wait until you have a UK postcode. There are a couple of grants available for those who don't live in the UK, but they are then tied to things like disability and lived experience of difficult circumstances. Whereas when you then tie that to, let's say, your Oxford or your Cambridge postcode, that's when you can kind of also tap into those often overlooked and maybe under promoted and less competitive, like local scholarships and grants. And also, just to clarify, those grants may be something, you know, a little £250 here, £500 there, maybe £1,000. But when you have a multiple of those things, it can add up, especially when, you know, it's halfway through the academic year and you feel like you're kind of low on funds. And then I just wanted to touch on some examples, just because it can feel like all of that is very abstract, but what does that look like in person? Well, in practice even. So what I found when I was looking on the Commonwealth Scholarships website is that they have shared scholarships, which are mainly based on financial hardship. And this is something that pretty much covers everything. It is open to all courses as well. However, one thing to bear in mind is that the application open very early. It opens in November and it closes December 12th. So at the same time that you're trying to submit your actual application is the same time where actually some of the really good scholarships like this one, like the Commonwealth Shared Scholarships, that's the same time that they're closing. So you need to be very organized. And as you can see by the list of what it covers pretty much everything. I picked this one because I've never seen anything so expansive, to the point of even covering, you know, child allowance if you do have a child and you want to bring them with you. And there's also the Ellison Scholars, which is specifically for undergraduates and PhD students. And I picked this one because also it kind of aligns with what Javon was thinking about in terms of studentships. Because for this one, what it is that it's not course specific, but it's something that is funded externally by, I think, the Ellison's company. And what they're looking at is they're trying to tap into the expertise that is being formed in Oxford and use that expertise in their field, in their company. So on top of having fees covered and some future funding for projects, they will also give you like basically a summer internship for you to actually work in their company as well. So it's kind of studentship adjacent. And then a little bit about the Rhodes Scholarship, which I will allow Alyssa to speak on.
Yeah, definitely. I can speak on it. And David, you know, please feel free to chime in whenever, if you have anything to add. David was also a Rhodes Scholar in my same cohort. So the Rhodes Scholarship, as I was telling Rakani, is a bit unique in that most of these scholarships that we have been talking about, you apply for Oxford, you get at least your conditional place, and then, you know, you can apply for or be considered for these external or internal scholarships. But the Rhodes Scholarship is a bit different in that you will know if you have won the Rhodes Scholarship before you even submit an application to Oxford. And the timeline is actually quite tight between being named, you know, Rhodes Scholar of your cohort for the year and when you have to put in the application. That's just besides the point. So make sure if you are interested in the Rhodes Scholarship, which everybody who is not British, as far as I know, should be able to apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. Just keep that in mind, that the timeline is even before the timeline that we were talking about. So you can apply for any postgraduate scholarship, obviously, that you would be qualified to apply for. And the requirements are really simple. You just need to have like basically a first class degree, a competitive GPA will help. And you have to have like a lot of references. I think in my memory, it was like 6 references or something. So I think that's the major barrier to entry for a lot of people, is getting a lot of references in for the timeline. But that is basically it. And so you submit that application, and then they let you know if you made it to interview, and there's a little, usually in person, social event and panel interview. And then pretty much immediately after, yes, only first class honors are considered. If you haven't got a first class degree, you do not meet the requirements, unfortunately. Oh, and there's an age requirement as well. So you have to be, this always trips me up, but I think you have to be under 24 at the time that you would be starting your degree or something like that. It's very clear on the website when you go into the eligibility checker, but it's something like that. And then once you are given the scholarship, you can go ahead and put in your Oxford application. And yes, you will be considered for all these scholarships that we talked about, the Oxford Internal Scholarship, on top of the Rhodes Scholarship. It doesn't preclude you. So that's, nice bonus. And basically, yeah, that's how the Rhodes Scholarship works. It's not means tested. It's not, ethnicity or anything like that. It's pretty much just academic excellence, though they do make a lot of efforts to be very inclusive. I think I touched on everything, David. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yes, and just a clarification with the age. You should be below the age of 25 by the time you went to Oxford, with the exception being that if you did a degree that meant you graduated much later, let's say engineering or medicine or so, then you are able to apply for the scholarship. The scholarship is, while it is very much an academic based scholarship, it is also one that looks at the work that you're doing at the extracurricular level, including whether it be in your school community or whether it be in the wider society as well. So it really aims to prioritize rounded students who are academically competitive. So I just wanted to add that to it as well.
No, thank you so much for that. And I wish they had something like that for Cambridge.
Just to add, I'm not sure if this is the moment, but the scholarship I got for Cambridge wasn't a scholarship I knew about beforehand. It was one of the scholarships that was matched against my application. It was the Prince of Wales Scholarship for Small Island Developing States, and it's open to any citizen from, as it says in the name, a small island country, who is interested in research that relates to a sustainability element to it. My research at the time, I believe I had indicated in my application, I was looking at agriculture financing. It had nothing to do with environmental sustainability. So I'm still, working on trying to figure out in my head what was the connection. But alas, they gave the scholarship nonetheless. So I'm grateful for that. But this is how this application process works. You sometimes get an offer and you have no idea where it comes from or what is the relationship with it. So the best way to go about this process is really just to go and apply. Yeah, just that point.
No, thank you so much. And I think this is the point where, did anybody have any questions about funding specifically from the international perspective? No. That is absolutely fine. So that is pretty much, we are towards the end. And I think, like I mentioned right at the start, if there's any questions that have kind of been saved because they are very, very Jamaica specific questions, then this is the opportunity to ask those, whether basically apply. Basically apply. That's the whole point of this whole event, is apply, you guys, apply. But I remember in the undergraduate one that we had on Monday, we had a representative who went to Campion College, and he kind of spoke about how difficult he found it to get a appointment for visas. So he kind of touched on that. So I was just wondering, whilst we are at it and whilst we have a little bit of time, if there were any specific questions in terms of international study, and then we can move on to the general Q&A, or we can simply just ask any questions now. Nope. Okay. So this is where I ask the question, do people want to do speed networking? Just raise your hand if you want to. Again, one of the goals of this event is that I'm very happy that we have people in the UK and people in Jamaica. And I feel like it's quite rare to have the opportunity to, oh, what is a student in Jamaica doing right now? Like, why are you interested in like to Oxford and Cambridge? And, be able to actually talk to each other. So if people are interested in speed networking, please just let me know. It is very interactive. But if it's something where people are like, you know what, I'm a little bit tired, it's been a longer session, also just let me know, and then we can just say, oh, yeah, I like that, Javon. Thank you. Okay, so speed networking is people bingo, you guys. It's people bingo. So hopefully you played People Bingo before. If not, I'm going to explain the rules very, very briefly. So it's meant to be a fun and fast way to meet new people, create some professional connections, get an understanding of each other. So we have a list of a few different things where if you do all of them, you get a bingo. I will figure out a prize at the end of the month if you do it. If you're the first person to get bingo. But what you want to really try and do is basically get a name associated with all of these. And the whole point is you've got to talk to each other. You've got to get an understanding of each other. You've got to actually engage and participate with each other. So this might be the time. I don't know if this is a cameras on time, but it's definitely, I believe, a bit more of a mic on time. So how we'd like to begin? Oh, you're on a bus. Okay. So maybe we can even just do it in the chat. I do not mind. And again, if it's something where the majority of us are not able to kind of talk, then what we can at least do is like pop our LinkedIns in the chat and then connect with each other independently. And I will get that ball rolling. Hold on. Folks, are we getting our LinkedIn? Okay. I'm just trying to get mine up. I don't know, actually, mine will not allow. There we go. Okay. So at this point, it is the end of the session. I think we've asked all the questions. If there are any final questions, this is kind of the time to, whether you pop your hand up, whether you pop it in the chat. But I know that we're also slightly over time now, and it is quite late, at least in the UK. So if there's no other questions, then I'd also just like to say thank you all so much for attending. I really appreciate it. I hope that you found all of this information really useful and insightful. And as I mentioned a couple of times, what we will do is, in terms of all of those links to the different scholarships, how to find them, all the bits and bobs that Sade has been putting in the chat, not only just in this event, but also for the undergraduate event and the event that's going on next Friday about general international study. So if you're interested in other UK universities beyond Oxford and Cambridge, then that's also an event for you, and you can sign up the same way, or just send me a quick email and or even pop it in the chat and I'll add you to that. But by the end of the month, we'll send you a robust document with all of the information that we've kind of shared with this. And yeah, I think that is everything for now. I'll give a few minutes for the sake of doing the connecting on LinkedIn.